Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Alfred Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt in 1943. Here is the set, of course, once again going for another Hitchcock film. Shame on me, I've not seen a Hitchcock since last August. That's literally the biggest gap since I started going, actually exploring quite a lot of his films. The originals that I saw, when I was younger as a kid. Psycho, The Birds, North by Northwest, that's probably another one that I saw bits. The 39 Steps I saw bits of, but those were the three that I saw, over 10 years ago. And of course, 2016 really, I started going on, kind of more film watching for Hitchcock, and now I've seen nearly 20, and I've loved all of them apart from Lifeboat. Did not like Lifeboat, but yeah, that's the only one really. And this one, of course, is in this set, the second in there. Shadow of a Doubt. Now, this is the one that I really liked on first watch back in 2017, but there was something about it I just didn't. I was disappointed personally. I think, yeah, I was disappointed somehow. This is known to be one of his very best, and of course, he himself, which really I realised doesn't really mean anything. It was his personal favourite, which it's very, very different for a filmmaker to say it's their favourite film, than viewers and stuff. And yeah, I had massive expectations, and I was disappointed. There was things about it, the story, that I just didn't quite connect to as much as I thought I should have. And yeah, I just didn't, I kind of forgot a lot of the second half of the film, and I just thought, compared to the rest of his work, it wasn't as tense and as investing. So yeah, I thought tonight, to kind of rejuvenate this director series of Hitchcock, I thought I'm not going to do North by Northwest, which is what I said I'd do next, after Vertigo, I believe, or any of the others. I thought let's just do this, let's revisit this film, let's see if I like it more. I did really, really like it, of course. I just didn't think, know if I loved it or not. It was very, very borderline. I thought there's greatness in there. I just really wasn't sure of the entire picture overall, and just the way it went and stuff, and my overall investment. So yes, this film, stars Joseph Cotten as Uncle Charlie, who basically, yeah, he goes to visit his relatives quite early on in the film, and yeah, it's a lovely family sort of reunion and stuff. And of course, Henry Travers plays one of the characters, of course. Teresa Wright, she also plays Charlie, named after, of course, her uncle. And yes, most of the rest of the film, basically he's a suspect for this murder that's happened to these three rich women. So yeah, basically, the rest of the film, detectives are on the case, and it's kind of very, very mysterious. When he arrives, things start happening, and it's about his relationship with his niece, Charlie, played by Teresa Wright, and of course, the mystery and the kind of thriller aspects coming in there, of course, through him. Is he the suspect? It's pretty obvious that he is. There's no spoilers in this review. It's very, very clear early on that he is. It's just a case of the family and stuff finding out, and how they find out, and also just the unravel of the events. The weird and twisted relationship he has with his niece, and just a great character study. It's intended to be of this character. And yes, I really do not know what was going on when I first watched it, because this film is another masterpiece from Hitch. The man, he really is just a genius, and this is another masterpiece yet again. So the only films of roughly the 18, I believe, that I've seen now that I don't think are masterpieces, it's just Lifeboat and Saboteur. That was pretty close to Saboteur. Love that film. This is better, and although I don't put it in his top 10 films, I still stand by that. Pretty hard to top. This film is definitely a masterpiece for me. I have really only one flaw, and it's not really too. It's just a tiny gripe, and it's just the one scene with the girl on the phone. The younger daughter of the family just seemed a bit scripted. That was it. It was just a bit. Yeah, it was a bit kind of. It was a bit pointless for me. That is it, and of course, there's many films where child performances and stuff, just little scenes like that can not really affect the picture. Does not dock the mark off, and this film is just something else. I loved every moment of this, from the very beginning scene. Of course, Joseph Cotten, basically he plays this killer, and of course, yes, it's learned that he's very, very strange, and he's very he doesn't have much of a sense of humour and stuff. And yes, of course, it's very, very clear early on that he is the killer, and it's just very, very disturbing stuff. His performance here is stunning. Of course, he was great in Citizen Kane, The Third Man. Not Heaven's Gate, but that's just a shame of a film. This one, he is amazing. He is the villain of the film, of course. And yes, basically, it's always kind of this dramatic irony throughout most of the film, where he's around this family, and of course the family are portrayed in this kind of innocent and you could say idyllic way. The setting as well is a key thing here. It's one of the most realised settings, kind of in a Hitchcock film. Actually, it's very, very idyllic, and the sense of community in this film is portrayed wonderfully. And then you've got that clash of this evil, twisted guy coming into play and kind of upsetting that, and kind of weaving his way into the family. Of course, it's basically his niece, also Charlie, Teresa Wright, basically idolises him. There's a very, very interesting relationship there. She looks up to him. She's obsessed with him, really, and she thinks he's perfect, basically. And of course, the irony is that he is this killer, and there's instant clues, to this, that he's got this very, very expensive ring that he gives her, and of course it's got writing on it. This film is not kind of a whodunit or anything. It's not a film where there's really any twists at all. This is why I'm not giving this a spoiler thing in the description, even though I am talking about it early on stuff, because it's not a spoiler if you've it's very, very easy to spot, and it's basically, it's all given to you. It's just how it unfolds, the tension, everything. The fact that he gives her this ring, and it's these rich women that have been killed, shown in the paper. You can put two and two together. It's very, very easy here, and it's so genius in its simplicity. The visual storytelling in this film is absolutely stunning. This is not, as I say, one of his very best films, but what you'd expect from most Hitchcocks. It is the cinematography, the overall visual style is immaculate. It's just amazing. The way he moves the camera, very, very kind of at times similar to Rebecca, which I have seen. For me, that is just his best film of the 40s. Rebecca, that is an absolute masterpiece. What a film. This one isn't quite as good as that. And it's not as good as Rope or Notorious for me, but it's another masterpiece from his 40s work. I think he got better and better, over these 3 decades, it seems. The 30s, great director. The 40s, one of the very best. 50s, stuff of legends. That's probably his best decade. The 50s, and then of course the 60s, more of a continuation of that. Psycho, The Birds. I've not seen Marnie and stuff, but yes, this film, it's just it's very, very similar in the style to Rebecca. It's more kind of sweeping, you could say, and of course it's more about the production again as well. To something like Rope, where it's more bare bones thriller, you could say. Although, it's very, very, it's like a stage, of course, stage play. But yes, it's shot, if you compare it, it's closest to Rebecca in its style, in its elegance, you could say. And yes, all the camera movements, the zooms, it's just wonderful. It really is here. The way he uses the visuals to tell a story in its own right is just stunning. Really was a master of visual storytelling. It's such an easy style to kind of take in, if you will. The way he just gets across simplicity is almost unmatched. I think he was one of the best directors of all time. He's in my top 5 filmmakers. That's never going to change. I think there's ones before I started delving into his work, like Scorsese and stuff, where I didn't think he would top them personally, but with Goodfellas and stuff. But for me, I do prefer Hitchcock. That is something else. Of course, I'd only seen a few back then, and now that I've dug into more of his work, literally masterpiece after masterpiece, and of course his very best 5, especially just some of the very best pieces of cinema. This one is a masterpiece, but it's not quite top tier Hitchcock, which is fine by me. This is a film that focuses more on family. It's more about the charm, the kind of the gracefulness, and stuff, and it's of course it's about community, and yes, it is very twisted at times through Joseph Cotten's character. He is scary. He really is a perfect villain for this film. What a performance. The way this film is written, it gives all the characters depth, but also not focusing just on too much of a certain character. It's a balance here. At first you've got the kind of first half of this film is more about the family, the relationships, a slow build, the gradual flow of the film, is kind of very evident, and then of course, you care about this family, these characters, Teresa Wright's character, of course, of Charlie, and of course Charlie, although he's a villain, he's not, one-sided, especially in the second half. Then in the second half is much more of a thriller, you could say. The detectives come into play more, most of the, Teresa Wright, of course, is more, kind of, aware of what's going on. She's, of course, very, very naive. Hitchcock's probably his cynical way of saying a lot of people are very naive and stuff, and anyone can be a killer in that sense. I love as well the conversations that some of the side characters have, along with Henry Travers' character, of course, of Joseph. I love the kind of the stuff they talk about, murder and stuff, the different ways. It's just a very, very, enjoyable and comedic thing he puts in the film, Hitchcock. Of course, there is a lot of comedy in the film, not as much as some of his other works, but there is, of course, an irony to it. There is, of course, a comedy throughout. It's just combine that with a very, very dark, kind of cynical edge this film has, and it's just the perfect blend as well. The editing, the way that Hitchcock kind of juxtaposes different images for effect, really, really wonderful here. Again, simplicity, but genius, it really is here, and the acting across the board, of course, is absolutely amazing. Not a single performance is bad. There was that scene with the phone, but really that's just one scene. The rest of the cast throughout the film, really, really amazing, and the charm to it. It's kind of a very, very warm film. It's a very, very joyous and an outgoing film. It's not really like a lot of Hitchcock films, actually. The style of this, and you could say Rebecca and stuff, are very, very different to a lot of his works, actually. And it's kind of at times like a different director. Apart from the way it's shot. I think actually because the actual kind of content of this is very, very different to what Hitchcock would do a lot of the time. But again, the style, the way he kind of builds tension, of course, the way he reveals different things visually is there. It really is. You can tell it's a Hitchcock film through the visuals. You'd get more closer to that if you just put the sound off. You would tell through his style alone that this is a Hitchcock film, but very, very different in its content, in its characters. I would say definitely. Maybe Joseph Cotten is you could say similar to some of the other villains in the Hitchcock films, but again, not really. I think, but definitely the rest of the cast and the way the film plays out is very, very different to a lot of his works. This is not a kind of on the run film or anything like North by Northwest. It's not a kind of chamber box thriller, and stuff like Rear Window or Rope even. It's very, very different. It's kind of like a family drama, and yes, it's so unique and it's so amazing. There's not a flaw really I have with this film. Pretty much flawless. The music is stunning. Again, it's kind of more outgoing and different to a lot of his works. Especially with Bernard Herrmann music. It's not really the same as that. It's more, as I say, like Rebecca, you could say as well, although a bit different. Yes, it feels like an epic in many ways as well. I just love this film. I got invested from the start this time round, and just loved how it unfolded. I didn't remember a lot of the second half, on this rewatch, and it's just a treat to see this unfold, of course. And it's very emotional towards the end of the film. You've got this subplot with a detective, and of course Teresa Wright, her character. They basically form a romance in the film, and the first time round, I didn't connect to that as much as I thought I would, and this time, I absolutely loved it. I think it really added a layer to the film, and just to kind of, a way to kind of maybe uplift, whether it is a lot of the stuff is cynical in the second half with Joseph Cotten. It's a masterly psychological kind of drama. The way that this character is studied, is just genius here. Great villain, of course, and you do feel a bit sympathetic. At least I did towards the end of the film. He's given motives towards the end of the film, which, really, really so well played out. The script, as I say, is amazing, and it's so sharp. The characters are given so much depth, and it's just the acting, especially towards the end of the film, really is amazing. And it's just a wonderful film. I would highly recommend this. I would say, don't expect it to be, from what I kind of approached it, I don't expect it to be the best, of course, or even top 5 necessarily, but you may think that, but don't go in thinking that because you may be disappointed. It's not, it's no Vertigo or or Rear Window or something. It's no Psycho, but for me, definitely a masterpiece. I wouldn't put it in the top 10 Hitchcocks, but I would say this is one of his masterpieces, of course, and that says a lot because the fact that he's made more than 10 is it's on that list of directors who, for me, that's very, very a small list of directors who have made more than 10 masterpieces. That's when you get into the very, very best, of course. And Hitchcock for me is, I think the way he's able to, very, very simple plots, of course. It's not about that. It's about how it's executed visually. He does, he wasn't just the master of suspense. He was the master of romance. I've said this before: action, comedy, and just he creates some of the greatest and most kind of charming characters in cinema. Working with, of course, some of the very best actors: Jimmy Stewart, Cary Grant, and Joseph Cotten, of course. Wonderful actor, and yes, this film, of course, is full marks. For me, every act is perfect, really, for me, and it's full of charm. It's full of a sense of wonder. Actually, I love this perspective of Teresa Wright's character of Charlie. I love the mystery of Uncle Charlie. And I love Joseph Cotten in the film. He's so good. Of course, he tries to charm everyone in the film, but he's deep down he's twisted and there's stuff not right from the outset. But of course that that he is the killer really, and it's just a matter of other people finding out. That's the tension in it early on and stuff, and very, very different in the second half. So yes, full marks for me, and yes, it doesn't get a plus. It doesn't quite get to that. I think it is a masterpiece, but it doesn't get into my top 200 perhaps. But yes, it gets 100%. Now that is something I didn't expect on this rewatch because I thought it was probably maybe a great film, maybe, but I just didn't quite connect to it as much as I certainly did now on this rewatch. Maybe didn't love the film, consistently, but certainly I do now. This is one of my, probably top 250 films, definitely 300. It's immaculate. It's a masterpiece. It's a very, very moving film, very, very human, of course. The way, very, very complex themes here, and it's just very, very easy to take in, of course, visually, as always. It's a wonderful style to the film. The music, the way it's used, it's kind of operatic at times. The whole intro is just full of charm and joy. Of course, classic, just classic joy, that cinema would bring from these films. And Hitchcock, of course, the charm of Hitchcock films, are just so evident. Of course, he's one of my favourite directors. He's in my top 5. Won't reveal the ordering of that top 5 yet. Save that for a list. I don't want to give everything away, but yes, he's certainly in the top 5. There's times where I've said he could be my second favourite, or even possibly my favourite. But then, Kubrick, of course, is my favourite. So yes, Hitchcock once again with this film, another masterpiece. So that's at least 15 actually that I've seen that are masterpieces. So that's a record of the most masterpieces from a director that I've seen. Not necessarily my favourite director, as I've said. Kubrick is. I don't think he's the best, not quite, but yes, that is definitely his milestone. He's the director who's, for me, made the most masterpieces that I've seen. So that's something, of course. And yes, another great thriller, another great drama, romance as well. The subplot, really, really complex and disturbing film. It's kind of like a horror film at times. These are the sort of films that horror films can take note from to actually be disturbing, the sense of dread, and actually just not being cheap. This is the sort of thing. Thrillers usually are better horrors than horror films are a lot of the time. And yes, another masterpiece from Hitchcock that I was invested in from start to finish. And yes, of course, another one from this set that just blew me away. So glad I gave this a revisit, before I went into the other ones again. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful film, beautiful film, human, and just so entertaining. It's wonderful, of course. Hitchcock, Shadow of a Doubt, wonderful film. So yes, can't wait to review more Hitchcock films. Of course, I'll be doing more and more now. Had a little bit of a break, not intentionally. Just so many films I've been watching, directors and stuff, and to do so many directors at once and review them. That's the thing. Not just watching them, reviewing them. it's sometimes hard, but I think I will go back to, of course, more of these, and the ones that I've not reviewed. Of course, cannot wait to do them. Psycho, The Birds, big films. The Birds being a bit more divisive, and yes, of course, thanks for watching my review.